The evening air held a certain stillness as Lucia Espinosa swept the wide hallway of the Harrington Music Academy. The sound of her broom against the polished wooden floor echoed softly through the empty building. Most days, she worked alone in this temple of music after all the students and teachers had gone home. Tonight was different. Her daughter Maria was with her. "Mama, I finished wiping down the practice room windows," Maria said, tucking a loose strand of dark hair behind her ear. At 16, she had her mother's warm brown eyes and gentle smile. But there was something else about her, a quiet watchfulness that seemed to take in everything. "Good. Now help me with the main hall," Lucia said, handing her daughter another broom. "We need to finish early tonight. Your brother has that soccer game tomorrow morning." Maria nodded and began sweeping, but her eyes kept drifting toward the doorway at the end of the hall, the concert room, the place where the grand pianos lived. Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 8 months, Maria had been helping her mother clean the academy. It wasn't exactly how most teenagers spent their evenings, but after their father had left last year, every extra dollar mattered. Besides, Maria didn't mind. Being here was like stepping into another world, a world of music that seemed just out of reach. As they worked their way down the hall, the familiar sounds of their cleaning routine, the swish of brooms, the clatter of dustpans, mixed with the memory of music that still seemed to hang in the air from earlier that day. Piano sonatas, violin concertos, the occasional burst of jazz from the more daring students. The building held these sounds like treasures. "You're daydreaming again," Lucia said, but her voice was soft with understanding rather than criticism. "Sorry, Mama," Maria said, quickening her pace, but her mother wasn't wrong. She had been daydreaming, imagining her fingers moving across piano keys, creating the kind of music that made people stop and listen. An hour later, they moved into the concert hall. This was Maria's favorite part of the job. The room itself was magnificent. High ceilings, rows of velvet-covered seats facing a stage where 3 grand pianos stood like sleeping giants. Each one gleamed under the dim safety lights that remained on after hours. "I need to get more paper towels and cleaner from the supply closet downstairs," Lucia said, checking her cart. "Can you dust the piano benches and the front edge of the stage? But remember, don't touch the pianos," Maria finished with a small smile. It was a rule her mother had repeated every time they cleaned this room. The pianos were expensive, precious instruments that only properly trained people were allowed to touch. "I'll be back in 10 minutes. The delivery man might be downstairs with our supplies. If he is, I might be a bit longer." As her mother's footsteps faded down the hallway, Maria found herself alone in the concert hall. The silence wrapped around her like a blanket. She moved toward the stage with her dusting cloth, carefully wiping the wooden benches as she'd been instructed. When she finished, she stood looking at the center piano, the crown jewel of the academy, a Steinway concert grand that had been played by famous musicians from around the world. In the 8 months she'd been coming here, Maria had never seen it without someone sitting at it. During the day, it was always surrounded by students or teachers. Now it sat alone, its black surface reflecting the soft glow from the safety lights. Maria glanced toward the door. Her mother would be at least a few more minutes. Before she could talk herself out of it, she climbed onto the stage and approached the piano. Just to look at it up close, she told herself. Just to see the keys that made such beautiful sounds. The piano bench felt cool and smooth as she sat down. Maria held her breath, half expecting alarms to go off or someone to rush in and scold her. But the room remained quiet, waiting. She lifted the cover, revealing the black and white keys beneath. Maria had never had a piano lesson in her life, but she had watched. For months, she had observed the students and teachers from doorways and while cleaning nearby rooms. She had seen how they positioned their hands, how they pressed the keys, how they used the pedals. And when she went home at night, she would practice on their old kitchen table, imagining the sounds that would come if it were a real piano. Tentatively, she placed her right hand on the keys, copying the position she had seen so many times. Her fingers found C major, the first chord she had memorized by watching a young boy practice it over and over one afternoon. The sound that filled the concert hall when she pressed down was so beautiful, so pure that Maria almost pulled her hand away in shock. But something kept her fingers on the keys. She tried another chord, then another. Each one rang out clear and true. Without really knowing what she was doing, Maria began to play. It wasn't a famous piece or even a proper song. It was something that had been growing inside her, note by note during all those hours of watching and listening. A melody that spoke of late nights and dreams just out of reach. Of her mother's tired smile and the way the sunset looked from their small apartment window. Her fingers moved more confidently now, finding the right keys almost as if they were being guided. The music flowed from some deep place inside her that she hadn't known existed. It was sad and hopeful all at once, simple but somehow perfect. Maria lost track of time as she played. The world narrowed down to just her hands and the keyboard. She didn't notice the figure that appeared in the doorway, didn't see him stop in his tracks, didn't watch as he pulled out his phone and began to record. Julian Mercer had only come back to retrieve his forgotten metronome. At 58, he had been playing piano for over 5 decades, had performed in the world's greatest concert halls, had taught some of the most promising young talents. He knew music, and what he was hearing now, this raw, untrained, but deeply moving melody coming from a girl he had never seen before, made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He stood absolutely still, afraid that any movement might break the spell. The girl at the piano, young, dressed simply, clearly not a student, played with a natural gift he encountered maybe once in a decade of teaching. There was something pure about it, unaffected by technique or tradition. The melody was original, he was certain of that. Not perfect, but perfect in its imperfections. As the final notes faded into silence, Maria sat very still, her hands hovering over the keys. For one wonderful moment, she allowed herself to imagine that this was her life, that she belonged here at this piano, that she could create music like this every day. Then reality came rushing back. She quickly closed the cover over the keys and stood up, her heart pounding. Had she been playing for 2 minutes or 20? Would her mother be back already? She hurried down from the stage, grabbing her dusting cloth from where she'd left it. Julian stepped back into the shadows of the hallway, watching as the girl returned to her cleaning duties, moving now with quick, nervous motions. He had so many questions. Who was she? How had she learned to play like that without formal training? Because he was certain she hadn't been trained. No teacher would have left that raw talent so unrefined yet so beautifully pure. Before he could decide whether to make his presence known, he heard footsteps coming up the hallway from the other direction. The girl looked up, relief washing over her face. "Sorry I took so long," a woman's voice said. "The delivery was short again. I had to count everything twice." "It's okay, Mama, I finished the dusting," the girl replied, her voice giving no hint of what she had just done. Julian slipped away, the recording safely captured on his phone. By tomorrow, everyone who mattered in the music world would know about the cleaning lady's daughter who played like she had music running through her veins. By tomorrow, her life would never be the same. But for now, Maria helped her mother finish cleaning the concert hall, stealing one last glance at the piano before they turned out the lights. Little did she know that the simple choice to touch those keys would set in motion events that would change everything. The secret talent she had kept hidden, even from herself, was about to be discovered. Julian Mercer sat in his car in the Harrington Music Academy parking lot, the engine off, staring at his phone. He had watched the video of the cleaner's daughter playing the piano at least 10 times now. Each viewing only confirmed what he had known instantly. This was something extraordinary. The night air had grown cool, but Julian barely noticed. He was trying to decide what to do. His first instinct had been to go back into the building and speak to the girl and her mother directly. But something had stopped him. The way the girl had hurriedly left the piano when she finished playing, the secretive glances toward the door. It was clear she wasn't supposed to be touching the instruments. He didn't want to get her or her mother in trouble. Instead, he opened his email and attached the video file. The recipient was Eliza Chen, the Academy's director and his former student from 20 years ago. "Eliza," he typed, "I just witnessed something at the Academy that you need to see. This girl is not a student. I believe she works with the cleaning staff. I've never heard anything quite like it. Call me as soon as you watch this. Julian." He pressed send before he could second-guess himself. Then he started his car and drove home, the melody the girl had played still echoing in his mind. Maria couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the smooth piano keys beneath her fingers, heard the rich tones filling the concert hall. It had been like touching a piece of heaven, and now that she knew how it felt, How would she go back to pretending she didn't desperately want to play again? She stared at the water stain on her bedroom ceiling, shaped vaguely like a music note. Their apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living room that doubled as her younger brother Thomas's bedroom when their cousin Luis stayed over. But it was home, and her mother worked incredibly hard to keep it that way. Just be grateful for what you have, she whispered to herself, turning over to face the wall. Playing that piano had been a stolen moment, a brief taste of another life that wasn't meant for people like her. Girls whose mothers cleaned buildings at night didn't become pianists. They became cleaners too, or cashiers, or if they were really lucky and studied hard, maybe office workers. Maria had always been a practical girl. She did well in school, helped at home, and never complained about the things they couldn't afford. But tonight, for the first time, she felt a yearning so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. The next morning, Eliza Chen arrived at her office earlier than usual. Julian's email had come in late, but she'd seen it first thing when she checked her phone. The video had left her speechless. Now she needed answers. She pulled up the cleaning staff schedules on her computer. There were 3 regular evening cleaners. Lucia Espinoza worked Tuesdays and Thursdays. Eliza picked up her phone and dialed the number listed for the cleaning company. "Hello, this is Eliza Chen from Harrington Music Academy. I need some information about one of your employees, Lucia Espinoza." "No, she's not in any trouble. I just need to confirm if she sometimes brings her daughter to work with her." "Yes, a teenage girl, I see. Thank you very much." Eliza hung up, satisfied. The company supervisor had confirmed that Lucia occasionally brought her 16-year-old daughter to help on busy nights. They allowed it because Lucia was their most reliable worker and the academy had never complained. Next, Eliza called Julian. "I watched it at least 20 times, she said when he answered. "Where did she learn to play like that?" "That's just it," Julian replied, the excitement clear in his voice. "I don't think she has learned, not formally anyway. Did you notice her technique? It's all wrong, but somehow perfect at the same time. And that piece she was playing, it wasn't anything I recognized. I think she was composing on the spot." "That's impossible," Eliza said automatically. Then she paused. "Isn't it? I've been teaching for 30 years, Eliza. I've seen prodigies before, but nothing quite like this. This girl has somehow taught herself to play, probably just by watching the students here, and she has a gift for composition that you can't teach." Eliza felt a tingle of excitement run through her. In her position, she was constantly on the lookout for exceptional talent. But finding it in the daughter of the cleaning lady was unexpected, to say the least. "What's your plan?" Julian asked. "I assume you have one." "I do," Eliza replied. "I want to hear her play again, this time with permission. Then we can talk about possibilities. Can you be here tomorrow evening around 6? I'll make sure Lucia and her daughter are here too." After hanging up, Eliza made one more call to Andre Washington, a renowned jazz pianist who happened to be in town for a concert the following night. Andre had been her classmate at Juilliard 25 years ago, and they had remained friends. When she sent him the video, his response was immediate. "I'll cancel my dinner plans. I need to hear this kid play in person." "You've been quiet today," Lucia said as she and Maria rode the bus to the academy the following evening. "Is everything okay?" Maria nodded, looking out the window at the passing streets. She hadn't told her mother about playing the piano. She never would. But she couldn't stop thinking about it, replaying every note in her head like a precious recording. "Just tired," she said. "I stayed up late finishing homework." Lucia patted her daughter's hand. "Soon it will be summer break and you can rest a little more." When they arrived at the academy, Maria immediately sensed something was different. The building wasn't entirely empty as it usually was at this hour. Through the windows, she could see lights on in the main office, and there was a sleek black car she didn't recognize parked near the entrance. "Maybe there's a late meeting," Lucia said with a shrug as she unlocked the door with her key. "We'll start at the back today and work our way forward." They had just begun setting up their cleaning supplies when Eliza Chen appeared in the hallway. Maria had seen the academy director from a distance before but had never spoken to her. She was a tall woman with short, stylish gray hair and glasses that made her look both intelligent and kind. "Lucia Espinoza?" Eliza asked, approaching them with a smile. Maria saw her mother straighten her uniform nervously. "Yes, ma'am." "Is there a problem?" "Not at all. I was hoping I could speak with you and your daughter for a few minutes in my office. Maria felt her stomach drop. Somehow they knew. Someone had seen her playing the piano last night. They were going to fire her mother because of what she had done. I'll wait here, Mama, she said quickly, hoping to spare herself the humiliation of being scolded and her mother the pain of losing her job. Actually, Maria, I was hoping to speak with both of you, Eliza said, looking directly at her. Please, it won't take long. They followed the director down the hallway to her office. Maria's legs felt like they were filled with lead. When Eliza opened the door, Maria was surprised to see two men already inside. One was older with silver hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. The other was younger with dark skin and an easy smile. Both were dressed casually but expensively, in the way that suggested they didn't have to try to look important. Lucia, Maria, this is Julian Mercer and Andre Washington, Eliza said, gesturing to the men. They're both pianists. Maria knew those names. Julian Mercer was one of the most famous classical pianists in the country. His recordings were used by advanced students at the academy all the time. And Andre Washington was a jazz legend whose music she had discovered on the ancient radio her grandmother kept in the kitchen. Please, sit down, Eliza said, indicating two chairs across from her desk. Lucia sat stiffly, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Have we done something wrong, Ms. Chen? She asked directly. Quite the opposite, Julian said before Eliza could answer. He looked at Maria with a smile. I came back to the academy last night to retrieve something I'd forgotten. I heard the most beautiful music coming from the concert hall. Maria felt the blood drain from her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know I wasn't supposed to touch the piano. It won't happen again. Andre Washington laughed softly. That would be a terrible shame, he said, his voice warm and deep. Because what Julian heard, what we all heard when he shared the recording with us, was something very special. Maria looked up in confusion. Recording? Julian had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I hope you'll forgive me, but I recorded part of what you played. I've never heard anything quite like it, especially from someone with no formal training. You recorded my daughter without permission? Lucia asked, her voice sharp with maternal protection. You're right, and I apologize, Julian said sincerely. I should have made my presence known. But I was afraid I might interrupt something magical, and it truly was magical, Maria. Maria couldn't process what was happening. These famous musicians were talking about her playing as if it was something valuable, something worth listening to. Maria, Eliza said gently, we'd very much like to hear you play again. With your permission this time and your mother's. Lucia looked as confused as Maria felt. My daughter doesn't play the piano, she said. We don't have a piano. We've never had money for lessons. That's what makes it even more extraordinary, Andre said, leaning forward in his chair. She's entirely self-taught, isn't she? Just from watching and listening. All eyes turned to Maria. She nodded slowly, afraid to speak. Would you play for us now, Maria? Julian asked. Just for a few minutes. She looked at her mother, seeking permission, guidance, anything. Lucia's expression softened. Is this true, Mija? Have you been teaching yourself to play? I just watch the students sometimes when I'm cleaning, Maria admitted. And I practice on our table at home. I'm sorry I touched the piano when I wasn't supposed to. Andre Washington stood up. Let's go to the concert hall, he said. I think we all need to hear this for ourselves. The walk from Eliza Chen's office to the concert hall felt endless to Maria. Her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. Famous musicians wanted to hear her play? It had to be some kind of joke, or worse. They wanted to laugh at the cleaning lady's daughter who dared to touch their precious instruments. You don't have to do this, Lucia whispered to her in Spanish as they followed the others down the hallway. We can go home right now. Maria glanced at her mother's worried face. Lucia had worked so hard for so long, cleaning other people's spaces while trying to create something beautiful in their own small apartment. She had never complained, even when her hands cracked from harsh cleaning products, even when people treated her like she was invisible. It's okay, Mama, Maria replied softly. I want to try. The concert hall looked different with the main lights on. Less magical, more intimidating. The three grand pianos on stage gleamed under the bright lights. No longer mysterious creatures hiding in the shadows, but imposing instruments designed for people who had spent their lives mastering them. Please, use the Steinway in the center, Eliza said. gesturing to the same piano Maria had played the night before. "It's the best one we have." Maria climbed the steps to the stage, feeling the weight of 6 eyes watching her every move. Julian and Andre had taken seats in the front row beside Eliza. Her mother stood to the side, arms crossed tightly across her chest, looking both proud and terrified. The piano bench felt the same as it had yesterday, cool and smooth beneath her. But everything else was different. Last night she had been alone, playing for herself in a stolen moment of pure joy. Now she was performing, something she had never done in her life. She placed her hands on the keys, but they suddenly felt stiff and awkward. What had she played yesterday? She couldn't remember. Her mind was blank with panic. "Take your time," Julian called gently from his seat. "Close your eyes if that helps." Maria took a deep breath and closed her eyes. She thought about their apartment, about the sounds of the city filtering through the thin walls, about her brother Thomas humming while doing homework, about her mother singing old songs while cooking dinner. She thought about the melody that had lived inside her for so long, growing every time she watched someone play at the academy. Her fingers began to move, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. The melody was simpler than what she had played yesterday, more fragile, but it was honest. It spoke of longing and hope and the beauty that exists in small moments. She didn't play for long, maybe 2 minutes, before her courage ran out and her hands stilled on the keys. She opened her eyes, afraid to look at the people watching her. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Then Andre Washington's deep voice broke it. "Well, I'll be damned," he said softly. Julian was already on his feet, walking toward the stage. "Maria, that was wonderful. Truly wonderful. Did you compose that yourself?" Maria nodded, still unable to look up. "It's just something I hear in my head sometimes." "You hear it in your head," Julian repeated, a note of wonder in his voice. "And you've never had any formal training?" She shook her head. "I just watch. And listen. The students here, they practice the same pieces over and over. I remember how their hands move." By now, Andre had joined Julian near the stage. "Play a C major scale," he instructed. Maria did as he asked, her fingers moving up and down the keyboard. Now a G minor. She hesitated, trying to remember if she'd seen someone play that before. "It's okay if you don't know it," Andre said. "I'm just trying to understand what you know and what you don't." "I've seen G major," Maria offered. She played the scale smoothly. Andre and Julian exchanged looks. "Play something you've heard the students practice," Eliza suggested from her seat. "Something classical." Maria thought for a moment, then began to play. It was the beginning of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, a piece she had heard countless times while cleaning the practice rooms. Her version wasn't perfect, her fingering was unconventional, and she simplified some of the more complex passages. But the emotion of the piece came through clearly. "Remarkable," Julian murmured. He turned to Lucia, who was watching her daughter with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Espinosa, your daughter has an extraordinary gift. She has somehow taught herself to play by observation alone. And even more impressively, she composes original music. This is extremely rare." Lucia looked overwhelmed. "But what does it mean? We cannot afford a piano. We cannot afford lessons." "That's why we're here," Eliza said, joining them near the stage. "Harrington Academy has a scholarship program for exceptional talents." "I believe Maria would qualify." Maria's hands froze on the keys. "A scholarship? To study here? It seemed impossible. But I'm just she started to say. "An incredible young musician." Andre finished for her firmly. "That's what you are." "It wouldn't be charity," Julian added, somehow sensing her pride. "Scholarships are earned, not given. And you, Maria Espinosa, have earned consideration with your natural ability." Maria looked at her mother, afraid to hope. Lucia's expression was a mixture of pride and uncertainty. "It would be a full scholarship," Eliza clarified. "Lessons, theory classes, access to practice rooms. Everything Maria needs to develop her talent." "And the cleaning job?" Lucia asked pragmatically. "I would still work here?" "Of course," Eliza assured her. "Your position is entirely separate from this discussion." Maria finally found her voice. "Could I really study here? With real teachers?" Julian smiled. "I'd like to teach you myself if you're willing. Once a week to start. I have a feeling we'll need to create a unique approach for someone with your particular way of learning music." It was too much to take in. Yesterday, Maria had been helping her mother clean, stealing a few forbidden moments at a piano. Today, she was being offered a chance that seemed to belong in a fairy tale, not in her real life. "I don't understand," she said honestly. "Why would you do this for me?" Andre sat down on the piano bench beside her. "Because music matters," he said simply. "And when someone has a gift like yours, it deserves to be nurtured." "There's another reason," Julian added. "Talent like yours comes along maybe once in a generation. Teaching you would be as much a privilege for us as it would be for you to learn." Maria looked back at the piano keys, trying to process everything. "What if I'm not good enough? What if you're wrong about me?" "We're not wrong," Andre said confidently. "But even if you weren't some kind of musical prodigy, which you are, you deserve the chance to find out what you can become." Eliza pulled out her phone. "In fact, I've already had several calls about you." Maria's eyes widened. "About me? How?" Julian looked slightly embarrassed. "I may have shared the recording with a few trusted colleagues last night. The response has been enthusiastic." "Who did you share it with?" Eliza asked, sounding more curious than upset. "Just Delia at the conservatory and Michael at Symphony Hall," Julian said. "But apparently Delia played it for her husband, who played it for his students, and, well, let's just say the musical community in this city is smaller than we sometimes remember." Maria felt dizzy. People she didn't even know had heard her playing, had formed opinions about her. The idea was terrifying. "It's too much," Lucia said suddenly, stepping forward to stand beside her daughter. "Maria is 16. She has school. We have responsibilities. This is happening too fast." Maria saw the adults exchange glances, recognizing the truth in her mother's words. "You're absolutely right, Mrs. Espinoza," Eliza said. "We've gotten ahead of ourselves. Why don't we start with something simpler? Maria, would you be interested in coming to the academy on Saturday mornings for a few hours, just to explore whether this is something you truly want to pursue?" It was a lifeline, a way to step cautiously into this new possibility without drowning in it. Maria nodded gratefully. "We could arrange a proper audition in a month or so," Julian suggested, "after Maria has had some time to work with me and decide if formal training is what she wants. And in the meantime, I know some people who might be able to help with a piano for your home," Andre added. "Nothing fancy, just something Maria can practice on." "A piano in our apartment?" Maria whispered, barely able to imagine it. Lucia still looked uncertain. "Our apartment is very small. And the neighbors, digital pianos can be used with headphones," Julian said quickly. "No sound needs to escape at all." For the first time, Lucia's stern expression softened a bit. "My daughter has always loved music. Even as a baby, she would stop crying when I sang to her. If this is really her talent—" "It is, Mama," Maria said, sudden confidence filling her voice. She played a brief, joyful melody that seemed to bubble up from somewhere deep inside her. "This is who I am. I just didn't know it until now." The simple phrase hung in the air, honest and true. For a moment, no one spoke, letting the weight of Maria's realization settle around them. Then Andre laughed, a warm sound that broke the tension. "Well, that settles it. Julian, you better clear your Saturday mornings for the foreseeable future. I have a feeling you're about to embark on the teaching challenge of your career." Julian's eyes twinkled. "I've never looked forward to anything more." As they worked out the details, Maria remained at the piano, occasionally playing soft notes, as if to reassure herself that this was real. The future that had seemed so fixed and limited just hours ago had suddenly expanded into something vast and full of possibilities. It was terrifying and wonderful all at once, and somewhere deep inside, a new melody was already beginning to form. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur for Maria. She continued going to school, helping her mother clean the academy twice a week, and taking care of her younger brother Tomas when Lucia worked extra shifts. But everything else had changed. True to his word, Julian had begun teaching her on Saturday mornings. Instead of the usual formal lessons he gave his advanced students, he took a different approach with Maria. He would play something once, a scale, a chord progression, a simple piece, and watch as she absorbed it like a sponge, replicating it almost immediately. "It's like you have some kind of musical photographic memory," he told her during their second session. "I've never seen anything quite like it." Maria shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just remember things I hear. I always have." Even more surprising was the digital piano that had appeared at their apartment 4 days after that first meeting at the academy. Andre Washington had arranged for it, along with a good pair of headphones. It was nothing fancy, a basic model with weighted keys that felt somewhat like a real piano. But to Maria, it was a miracle. Now on a sunny Wednesday afternoon, Maria sat in the academy's waiting area, nervously twisting the strap of her backpack. Today was different. Today she would play for people she didn't know, professional musicians who, according to Julian, were very interested in meeting her. "You'll be fine," Julian reassured her, sitting down beside her. "Just play the way you do when we're working together." "Be yourself," Maria nodded, trying to believe him. The door to Eliza's office opened and Eliza herself stepped out, followed by 3 people Maria didn't recognize. "Maria, I'd like you to meet some colleagues," Eliza said warmly. "This is Dr. Vivian Rodriguez from the National Conservatory, Philip Chan from the Symphony Orchestra, and Gabrielle Dupont, who runs the Young Artists Foundation." Maria stood up quickly, suddenly aware of her worn jeans and simple t-shirt. These people looked important in their polished shoes and crisp clothes. Dr. Rodriguez was an older woman with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. Philip Chan was tall and thin with kind eyes behind his glasses. Gabrielle Dupont was younger than the others with a stylish haircut and a bright scarf. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Maria," Dr. Rodriguez said, extending her hand. "Julian has told us so much about you." "All good things, I hope," Maria managed to reply, remembering the polite phrase her mother had taught her to use when meeting adults. Gabrielle Dupont smiled. "Very good things. We're quite excited to hear you play." They moved to the concert hall where the same Steinway grand piano waited on stage. Maria had practiced on it several times now during her lessons with Julian, but playing for these strangers made it seem intimidating again. "What would you like me to play?" she asked, looking to Julian for guidance. "Start with the piece you've been working on," he suggested. "Then perhaps something of your own." Maria nodded and sat at the piano. The piece Julian had given her was Bach's Prelude in C major. Relatively simple but beautiful. She had fallen in love with it immediately. She took a deep breath and began to play. The familiar notes flowed from her fingers, and after a few measures she forgot about the people watching. She was just in the music, letting it surround her. When she finished, she looked up to see all 4 adults watching her intently. "Very nice," Dr. Rodriguez said. "Your technique is unusual but effective. How long have you been studying?" 2 weeks, Julian answered for her. Formally, that is. Philip Chan's eyebrows shot up. 2 weeks? And she's playing Bach already? "Maria is what we sometimes call an intuitive musician," Julian explained. "She learns primarily by ear and observation, rather than through traditional instruction." "Play something of your own now," Gabrielle encouraged. "Something you've composed." Maria hesitated. She had been working on a new piece at home on her digital piano, something that came to her late at night when she couldn't sleep. But it wasn't finished, and it felt private somehow. "It's not ready," she said softly. "That's okay," Philip said kindly. "We'd still love to hear whatever you have." Maria placed her hands on the keys again and closed her eyes. The melody that came was different from anything she had played before, more complex with emotions that seemed too big for her 16 years. It spoke of dreams taking shape, of doors opening, of fear and excitement tangled together. When she finished, the silence in the room was heavy with something she couldn't name. "That was extraordinary," Dr. Rodriguez said finally, her voice slightly hoarse. "Did you really compose that yourself?" Maria nodded, suddenly shy again. "What do you call it?" Gabrielle asked. "I don't know. It doesn't have a name yet." "It should be called Transformation," Philip suggested, because that's what it felt like, something changing, becoming something new. The adults began to talk among themselves, occasionally glancing at Maria. She could only catch fragments of their conversation, words like potential and development and opportunity. Julian joined them, answering questions she couldn't hear. After what felt like forever, they all turned back to her. "Maria," Dr. Rodriguez began, "we believe you have exceptional talent, the kind of talent that deserves serious cultivation. Julian has proposed a special program for you. Private instruction with him, music theory with me at the conservatory, and performance opportunities through the Young Artists Foundation. It would be a full scholarship, of course," Gabrielle added quickly. The foundation would cover all expenses. Maria's mind was spinning. It sounded wonderful, impossible, overwhelming all at once. What about school? She asked, thinking practically as her mother had taught her. And helping my mom? You would continue your regular education, Philip explained. This would be supplementary, a few hours each week. We've already spoken with your mother about the schedule. You have? This surprised her. When? Last week, Julian said. We wanted to make sure it would work for your family before discussing it with you. A flicker of annoyance passed through Maria. They had been planning her future without her? But she pushed it aside. They were trying to help, after all. And what does my mother think? She asked. She was concerned about the practical aspects, Dr. Rodriguez said honestly. The time commitment, transportation, how it might affect your schoolwork. But once we addressed those concerns, she seemed cautiously supportive. Cautiously supportive. That sounded like Mama. Always careful, always thinking about the long term. There's something else, Gabrielle said, stepping forward. The Young Artists Foundation hosts a showcase concert each year. It's a prestigious event. Many important people from the music world attend. We would like you to perform. Maria's eyes widened. Perform on stage? For an audience? Yes, Gabrielle nodded. It would be a wonderful opportunity to introduce you to the wider musical community. When is it? Maria asked, her mouth suddenly dry. 6 weeks from now. 6 weeks? Maria echoed, panic rising in her chest. But I've only been taking lessons for 2 weeks. I can't possibly be ready to perform in 6 weeks. Julian came to sit beside her on the piano bench. Maria, you're already ready. What you just played for us, that piece alone would be enough to impress anyone in that audience. But it's not finished. And my technique is unique, Julian completed for her. And that's part of what makes your playing special. We're not trying to turn you into a conventional pianist. We want to nurture your natural voice. Maria looked down at her hands, the hands that cleaned with her mother, that cooked dinner for Thomas, that did homework late into the night. Hands that somehow knew how to create music even though no one had ever taught them. Can I think about it? She asked quietly. It's a lot to take in. Of course, Dr. Rodriguez said immediately. Take a few days to consider it. But I hope you'll say yes. Talents like yours don't come along often, Maria. It would be our privilege to help you develop it. As they left the concert hall, Maria felt like she was in a dream. Just 3 weeks ago, she had been the invisible girl who cleaned the academy after hours. Now, important people were making plans for her, seeing something in her she hadn't even known was there. Later that evening, Maria sat at the small kitchen table in their apartment, picking at her dinner. Lucia watched her daughter with knowing eyes. You had your meeting today, she said. It wasn't a question, Maria nodded. They want me to perform at some big concert. In 6 weeks, and you don't want to? I don't know, Mama. Maria pushed her rice around her plate. Everything is happening so fast. What if I fail? What if all these important people are watching me and I mess up? What if I'm not really as special as they think I am? Lucia reached across the table and took Maria's hand. Do you remember when you were 7 and your teacher wanted you to sing a solo in the school concert? Maria smiled slightly. I was so scared I hid in the bathroom. Yes, and I found you there crying. Do you remember what I told you? You said that fear is just excitement without breath, Maria recited. You said to take deep breaths and let the fear turn into something better. And did you sing? Yes. Were you still afraid? Yes, but it was different. It was more like energy. Lucia squeezed her daughter's hand. This is the same. Only this time the stakes are higher. This could be your path, Maria. A different life than I had than I could give you, but you have to want it. Maria looked at her mother's hands, rough from years of cleaning with broken nails and calluses. Hands that had worked so hard to keep their family afloat. What if I'm not good enough, Mama? Lucia's eyes were fierce with love. You are more than good enough. You always have been. The only question is whether you want this. Do you think I should do it? What I think doesn't matter. This is your gift, your chance. All I want is for you to be happy, to use whatever talents God gave you. Maria was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then she stood up and went to the digital piano in the corner of their small living room. She put on her headphones and began to play, working on the piece that Philip Chan had suggested she call Transformation. As her fingers found the keys, she felt something settling inside her. A certainty, a direction. She would play at the concert. She would take this chance, this incredible opportunity that had appeared in her life like magic. And whatever happened, she would face it with her mother's words in her heart. Fear is just excitement without breath. The 6 weeks leading up to the Young Artists Foundation showcase flew by in a whirlwind of practice, lessons, and preparation. Maria's life had transformed completely. She still went to school, still helped her mother clean the academy on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but every other spare moment was devoted to music. Julian had been working with her 3 times a week now, pushing her to refine her natural talents while being careful not to squash her unique approach to the piano. Dr. Rodriguez taught her music theory every Saturday morning, filling in the gaps in Maria's knowledge, teaching her to read music properly, to understand the structure behind the sounds she instinctively created. And her piece, had grown and evolved into something that even Maria sometimes couldn't believe had come from her own mind. Julian had helped her write it down, note by note, so she wouldn't forget any part of it. They called it transformation, as Philip Chan had suggested, and it had become not just a piece of music but the story of Maria's own journey. Now, on the night before the showcase, Maria sat on the edge of her bed, too nervous to sleep. Tomorrow evening, she would play her composition for an audience of over 300 people, including some of the most important figures in the classical music world. The thought made her stomach twist into knots. A soft knock on her bedroom door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called quietly. Lucia opened the door, carrying 2 steaming cups of chamomile tea. She handed one to Maria and sat down beside her on the bed. "You should be sleeping," her mother said gently. "Big day tomorrow." Maria nodded, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see all those people staring at me, waiting for me to fail. Or waiting to be moved by your music," Lucia countered. "That's also possible, no?" Maria gave a small smile. "Maybe. Julian says the piece is ready. He says I'm ready. And what do you think?" Maria took a sip of tea before answering. I think the music is ready. I'm not sure if I am." Lucia studied her daughter's face for a long moment. "Do you remember your first day of school? You were so excited about your new backpack and shoes, but when we got to the classroom door you froze. You wouldn't let go of my hand." "I was 5, Mama." "Yes, and now you're 16. But sometimes the feeling is the same, no? Standing at the edge of something new, afraid to let go of what's familiar." Maria nodded, understanding exactly what her mother meant. "Tomorrow, you will walk onto that stage alone," Lucia continued. "But remember that your family is with you. All your practice, all your hard work, all the music you've kept inside you for years, it all goes with you." Maria leaned her head against her mother's shoulder, drawing comfort from her solid presence. "What if they don't like it?" "Then they don't like it," Lucia said simply. "The sun will still rise the next day. You will still be Maria with this beautiful gift inside you. No one can take that away." They sat together in comfortable silence, drinking their tea. After a while, Lucia kissed her daughter's forehead and stood up. "Sleep now, mija. Tomorrow is an important day." After her mother left, Maria lay down and closed her eyes. Instead of seeing a judgmental audience, she tried to picture the music flowing from her fingers, touching each person in the concert hall like ripples in water. Somewhere between that image and the memory of her mother's reassuring words, she finally drifted off to sleep. The Young Artist Foundation showcase was held in the city's most prestigious concert venue, a beautiful hall with excellent acoustics and a seating capacity of over 500. By 6 o'clock, an hour before the program was set to begin, the lobby was already filled with people in elegant evening wear, making Maria feel out of place in the simple black dress Gabrielle had helped her choose for the occasion. Backstage, Maria peeked through the curtains at the growing audience. Each row that filled increased the fluttering in her stomach. "Nervous?" Julian asked, appearing beside her. "Terrified," Maria admitted. "I've never seen so many people in one place before." Julian smiled kindly. "Do you know what the great Vladimir Horowitz once said about stage fright?" Maria shook her head. "He said, there is no cure for stage fright. You just have to live through it like a cold." "And he was one of the greatest pianists of all time." "That's not very reassuring," Maria pointed out. Julian laughed. "Perhaps not. But it might help to know that even the legends feel what you're feeling right now. The difference is they walk on stage anyway." Maria took a deep breath. "I'll walk on stage," she promised. "Just don't expect me to enjoy it." You might surprise yourself, Julian said. Once you start playing, once you're in the music, everything else tends to fade away. Gabriel appeared, clipboard in hand. Maria, you're fifth in the program right after intermission. That's a featured spot. The audience will be refreshed and attentive. Maria nodded, trying to look more confident than she felt. Your family is seated in the third row center, Gabrielle continued. Your mother, brother, and is that your grandmother with them? Yes, Abuela insisted on coming. She's never been to a concert hall before. Gabrielle smiled warmly. Well, they all look very proud already, and you haven't even played a note yet. The thought of her family sitting out there supporting her gave Maria a small burst of courage. Whatever happened tonight, she wouldn't be facing it alone. The first half of the program passed in a blur. Maria watched from the wings as 4 young musicians performed, a violinist, a cellist, and 2 pianists. All were technically brilliant, playing complex classical pieces with precision and skill. Maria's confidence wavered as she listened. These students had years of training, while she had barely 6 weeks of formal instruction. During intermission, Andre Washington found her sitting alone in a quiet corner backstage. How are you holding up? He asked, taking a seat beside her. Everyone is so good, Maria said, voicing her doubts. They're playing Mozart and Chopin and Liszt, and I'm playing me. Just something I made up. Andre was quiet for a moment, considering her words. Then he said, Let me tell you something about music, Maria. Technical skill is important. All those scales and arpeggios and fancy fingerwork. But the truly great musicians, the ones people remember, they're the ones who have something to say. Something real, something that comes from inside them. He gestured toward the stage. Those kids out there are incredibly talented. They've mastered difficult pieces, and that deserves respect. But you're doing something much harder. You're sharing your own voice. Maria thought about this. But what if my voice isn't good enough? Andre's expression grew serious. Here's what I know after 30 years in music. There will always be someone who plays faster, someone who knows more pieces, someone with fancier technique. But there is only one person who can play exactly like Maria Espinosa, and that's you. That's your superpower. Don't waste it trying to be like everyone else. A stagehand appeared, signaling 5 minutes until the second half began. Andre stood and offered Maria his hand, pulling her to her feet. Ready to share your superpower with the world? He asked with a grin. Despite her nerves, Maria found herself smiling back. I guess we'll find out. The lights in the concert hall dimmed, and a hush fell over the audience as Gabrielle Dupont walked onto the stage. Our next performer joined the Young Artists program just 6 weeks ago, but she has already made an extraordinary impression on everyone who has heard her play. Tonight, she will perform an original composition. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Maria Espinosa. The applause was polite as Maria walked onto the stage. She caught a glimpse of her family in the third row, Mama and Thomas and Abuela, all sitting up straight, faces full of love and pride. Behind them, scattered throughout the audience, were the people who had believed in her from the beginning. Julian, Eliza, Andre, Dr. Rodriguez, Philip Chan. Maria sat at the piano, adjusting the bench slightly. The hall was so quiet she could hear the soft sound of the pedals as she tested them. She placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. The opening notes of Transformation filled the concert hall, gentle at first, like the beginning of a story. Maria closed her eyes, letting the music take over. She was no longer thinking about technique or the audience or her nervousness. She was just telling her story through the piano, the story of a girl who cleaned an academy at night and dreamed of playing, the story of an unexpected opportunity, the story of fear and courage and growth. As the piece built in complexity and emotion, Maria felt something strange happening. The nervousness that had plagued her all day was transforming into something else, a kind of electric energy that flowed through her into the music. Her fingers moved with confidence and purpose, bringing forth sounds that seemed to reach every corner of the hall. She